are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Sun Show.
All right. Good morning, folks. Thank you for joining us here on the Sun Solar Panel on an early Saturday morning, because this is the only place you guys want to be on Saturday morning. I just know it, and I appreciate you for being here. I know you guys will be trickling in here over the next few minutes, but I would like to get us going here on the show. Sorry, I'm just looking at my show notes. This is Dave King. And I'm always here with you with my podcasting partner, Zona Hoops. How you doing, Zona?
Not bad. A little disappointed tonight. The Suns don't have any reps, but we'll get into that for All-Star Saturday night. And but yeah, good to be back here on this early Saturday morning.
Best team in the NBA, one of the best teams in NBA history, yet no All-Star starters, no representatives in any of the extra contests on Saturdays. That's where the Suns used to live, is Saturday and not Sunday. Fridays and Saturdays used to be what the Suns owned back in the days we started this podcast, or I started this podcast, and you started covering the Suns. Now all we have is Sunday. But you know what? If you had to pick a day of the weekend to be represented, Sunday's the best day.
True.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get started here. What we've got today is 4 quarters of fun. We're going to recap this past week, how the Suns did, how the Suns finished their first half or first pre-All-Star break part of the season. And then we're going to talk about Chris Paul's thumb injury and discuss what kind of impact that might have on the Suns. He's been wearing a brace. He's in Cleveland for All-Star weekend, but he's wearing a brace that's immobilizing his thumb on his right hand. Then we're going to go through our true false, all our burning questions, and then we're going to preview what's next. So let's get moving. Brandon, why don't you take a second and recap this past week for us?
Yeah, so as we all predicted, they went 3-0, took down the Magic in convincing fashion with Craig and Holiday making their debuts, and then took down the Clippers as well, and then beat the Young Rockets team that me and you were actually in attendance for Brightside Night. So shout out to you for putting that together.
Thank you.
But yeah, it was another 3-0 perfect week, and they're 18-1 in their last 19. So this team's just not slowing down anytime soon. It just seems like they're a machine, and with Chris Paul getting ejected in the Rockets game, and it seemed like it was an uphill climb, and their offense just didn't really have it for most of that night. And when it mattered most, they kind of pulled it out. And, it was a fun game to watch, even though it shouldn't have been that close in the first place.
Yeah, no kidding. Rao in the chat put in a question here. Chris Paul faked his injury to not go to the All-Star game. Well, that's kind of funny that you would say that as I'm explaining that he's actually in Cleveland, spending the weekend in Cleveland, and he's going to the trouble of putting a brace on his hand that everyone's going to be asking him nonstop questions about. And he's almost certainly going to be playing in the game on Sunday, as one of the Suns assistants said on Friday night when talking about the Rising Stars Challenge that the Suns assistant coaches were able to participate in and help coach. Chris Paul would crawl out there if he could on the floor for the All-Star game. And we all know Monty Williams just can't say no. I mean, if there's a guy he can't say no to, it's Chris Paul. That's for sure. So I'm not sure if this is a faking an injury, but certainly it's nice to see that there has not been an announcement on a long-term issue with him. We're going to get more into this later in the show. I just want you guys to know, thank you so much for joining us in the chat, and I will be sharing your chat questions and comments and all that throughout the show. And if you guys put in a fun comment, I will definitely share it. All right. So before we get too far into this, I do want to thank a couple of fans for leaving a couple of more 5-star reviews over the past week for our show. We work really hard to put this show together, not only these Saturday mornings live for you, but also doing midweek shows with interviews. I had an interview with Caitlin Cooper this past week, who covers the Indiana Pacers, to talk about Jalen Smith and Torrey Craig and They had Aaron Holiday for 3 years as well. That was a really fun show. So we got a couple of new 5-star reviews, and I want to recognize these folks. There's a guy called Hoops Reviewer. So great. You gave us a review. Thank you very much. Love the in-depth analysis of the Suns and the mix of guests that can give a great outside perspective on the team in relation to the rest of the league. It's absolutely true. My big goal on this show, Saturdays, we keep it local, but during midweeks, I try to make it national. So we get a bit better national perspective on this team. And then another fan who gave us a 5-star review, Bowling for Dollars, says, my wife hates Saturday mornings. Every Saturday morning, I wake up, make coffee, and log into the YouTube on my TV and tune into Solar Panel. She gets mad that we can't start running errands until after the show ends. Buddy, thank you so much for joining us on this every Saturday. And Buddy's wife, sometimes you just got to compromise. Life is full of compromises, and this is one of those that any husband or wife should make for their spouse. Thank you so much. So Brandon, this has been a great ride for us this year, watching the best team in the NBA. Let me bring up a couple of things that I'm not sure you guys know about just how good the Suns have been this year. So what I'm going to do here is give you guys a little bit of stats you may not have known. The Suns are 24-3 in the clutch this year. 24-3. I want to make a couple of comments about the 24-3. First of all, that sounds like a lot. Where do you think, Brandon, where do you think the Suns rank in total clutch minutes played this year compared to their counterparts throughout the rest of the league? Where do you think the Suns are among the 30 teams?
I feel like they have to be top 5.
In clutch minutes played?
Yes. I'm going to say 4th.
Folks in the chat, what do you think? Clutch minutes played this year.
It might be lower
for the
though,
Suns.
I mean, they have had a ton of blowouts, but it just feels like 20. You know, I'm gonna drop it down to 7th.
Okay, so Blaze Megatron says top. New Hope Manny says 25. That's quite the range, guys. Nathaniel Jackson, I think they're number 1. 9th from Fabio. So I think you all have a strong impression that the Suns have played the most clutch minutes or some of the most clutch minutes in the league this year. You might be surprised to know that the Suns only rank 24th.
Wow.
Suns are only 24th in the league in total clutch minutes played. They've only played 85 clutch minutes. What counts as clutch minutes, which is any time on the clock in a game that at some point when it's within 5 points in the last 5 minutes. So it's a little bit wonky in that if you got a 5-point lead, while you have that 5-point lead, it's clutch time. But as soon as you make a bucket and make it a 7-point lead, it's not clutch time anymore. Or other way around, when they, cut it, it's usually 7 and then they cut it down to 5 for a few seconds. That counts as clutch, even though you really had a 7-10-point lead. The Suns actually have played only the 24th most minutes in the clutch this year. There's a lot of clutch games in the NBA, folks. You only just watch the Suns. Now, here's the other side of it. Blaze points this out. Isn't Book and CP top 5 clutch buckets? Actually, what's hilarious is that the whole Suns starting lineup are 5, including DeAndre Ayton, who has missed a third of the season so far. The whole Suns starting lineup, 5 people in the starting lineup, have the biggest plus minus in the league out of the top 7. 5 of the top 7. The only reason Ayton is 7th is because he hasn't played all the clutch minutes his teammates have on plus minus. So the point differential, the Suns have outscored their opponents by 99 points in the clutch this year. Sorry, 90. I think it's 92. Sorry, 92 points in the clutch in only 85 minutes. Outscored.
That's insane.
That's insane. It's insane. Yes. Chris Paul has the biggest individual plus minus at plus 99. Then you got Mikal Bridges, you got Devin Booker, you got Jae Crowder, then a couple of Bulls actually, and then DeAndre Ayton as far as total clutch plus minus on the season. So the Suns are the best clutch team. They're 24-3. Zona. How many teams? I'm going to do another stat me, and I love this.
Dave, stat me. Dave, stat me.
Second Dave stat me. I had to do it twice. Zona. How many clutch teams have a better record at home against all opponents than the Suns do in the clutch this year?
0. Right?
What do you guys think in the chat? Come on, there's got to be a team who's better at home against all teams, the worst teams, the best teams, all that, than the Suns are just in clutch situations. There's teams. There's got to be teams.
I don't think so. I'm gonna go 0.
All right, you know what? You're absolutely right. It's 0. There's not a single team in the league with a better home record, because 24-3 is so freaking crazy, than the Suns do just in the clutch games, no matter where they are.
I had to redeem myself after being so off on the first one. So.
I have another one for you. So this will be our third. I'm going to save you guys the stat me. How many teams in the league have a better home record than the Suns' road record?
I'm going to go with 1. I feel like there might be some random team that has, just off the top of my head, that has a really good road or home record.
Folks in the chat, I'll give you a few seconds.
It might be 0 again, honestly. It's either 1 or 0.
So usually, teams make their living at home, right? You get the home crowd, you get the fans, especially Suns fans, going nuts at home. And then on the road, you're dealing with the other team's fans, right? So and the other team getting extra benefit. Ty Johnson says just 1. New Hope Manny says 2. Blaze Megatron says 1. There are actually 0 teams with a better home record now. And that's only since Golden State lost at the buzzer to the Denver Nuggets the other night. When Golden State lost at the buzzer the other night to Monte Morris hitting a 3 to beat them after Steph Curry had hit a 3-point play, old-fashioned 3-point play to give them Warriors a 2-point lead at home the other day. Not one team in the NBA has even a better home record than the Suns' road record. So the Suns are best in the NBA in the clutch over anyone. best at home, best on the road. All of that. They also have a 6.5 game lead in the West. When was the last time a team had more than a 6.5 game lead at the All-Star break? Any ideas, Zona?
Well, I see the show notes, so I'm cheating.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I'm gonna let the chat guess.
I actually gave you the answer on that one in the show notes. Yeah,
but I did see that stat. I think was it ESPN Stats and Info or some account tweeted that out, and
yep,
it's crazy.
Yeah. Scott Van Pelt, SVP on
That's
Late
right.
Sports Center, first shared it, but that was ESPN Stats and Info, who could have gotten it from anywhere. But basically, that was the first time I saw it, and that was incredible. Folks in the chat, when do you think the last time any team in the NBA had a 6.5 game lead at the All-Star break? Blaze asked if it was the Golden State Warriors with 4 in their prime Hall of Famers. Nope. They never had a 6.5 game lead.
So that was the year of Cleveland was also like neck and neck with them.
Cleveland was great. And Houston. Chris Paul's
Houston as well.
Houston won 65 games and still finished second, I think, or maybe. Yeah. Jordan's Bulls had a 6 or more game lead 3 times in their 6-year run to championships. But the last time they had more than 6.5 was a 7.5 game lead in 95-96. That was it. 95-96. How old were you in 95?
Like 1, 2.
Yeah, exactly. Your entire lifetime, no team has had a bigger lead at the half.
It's crazy.
I had kids already, but we won't talk about that part. Okay. So yet still there are doubters. Vegas still only has the Suns tied for best odds, and that was only in the past week when they beat the Bulls and the Bulls, Bucks, and who else in 3 consecutive games? Why am I drawing with Sixers?
Sixers,
In
yeah.
3 consecutive games, suddenly, finally, the Vegas odds makers put the Suns as tied with the Nets for the best odds to win the championship. Who's got the third best odds?
Third best, probably Warriors.
Yeah. Barely behind the Suns. People still think the Warriors are going to beat the Suns anyway because they're thinking about prime Warriors. But you know what? These aren't prime Warriors anymore. If Dre gets healthy, I want Dre to get healthy. I really want Dre to be healthy. I want Andrew Wiggins to have to prove his all-star starter status. I want Steph Curry to have to be MVP Steph. And I want them to really have to beat the Suns. But I guarantee you, what I guarantee you is the Suns will make Golden State play their best basketball of their lives to beat them. And I just don't think Golden State has it in them anymore.
I think that'd be a hell of a series. I think the Suns' depth just outweighs Golden State so much that the only way the Warriors are going to beat the Suns is if Draymond's back 100% and Steph is playing like MVP Steph. There's no, like, their margin for error against the Suns. Yeah, their margin for error is like so thin that I just think, we've seen it throughout the season. The Suns they're a well-oiled machine that's just not slowing down, and the Warriors still have a lot of things to figure out. And, when you're in the middle of the season, you don't really have, they have an identity, but they just haven't played to it. So on a consistent basis. So I think that's the main difference between the Suns and Warriors. I think the Suns would take them down in 6 at this point. And I think a lot of the national media is going to, trust the Warriors more because of their past, but I'm fine with that. Keep sleeping on the Suns. We're just going to, full strength. They're going to end up back in the finals.
For the same reason, I'm expecting if the Suns, make the finals again, win the championship, whatever it is, the Suns will start getting more credit in subsequent years than they might deserve because of their pedigree. And I would love the Suns to be back in that mode. I would love that. We haven't had that in a long time. So I don't mind the Warriors getting some people thinking, oh, they could be the best. Fine. Just beat the Suns. Figure out how to beat the Suns.
Someone in the chat said the Warriors could take down the Grizzlies could take down the Warriors. And I agree. That's a tough matchup for them. If I could see, John Morant just going crazy and that team is young. They're hungry. So I would love to see that matchup as the 2-3 out West.
I think that's very likely to be the 2-3. So I'm going to go into this. I'm kind of jumping ahead from our later segment, but I like covering this stuff. What record do the Suns need? There's 24 games left. Okay. The Suns' best finish in a regular season has been 62 wins ever, 62-20, right? Mm-hmm. They've done 62-20 twice, 61-21 once. For the Suns to better that, all they have to do is go 15-9 the rest of the way. Guess what? If the Suns just go 15-9, that would be almost doubling their losses in only 24 games. So sounds kind of unlikely, right? If the Suns go 15-9, what do the Warriors have to do to beat them for the top seed?
Pretty much go perfect.
24-1. The Warriors would have to go 24-1 to finish with 60 more than. So the Suns would end up with 63 wins if they go 15-9. To get 64, the Warriors would have to basically go undefeated the rest of the year. They're not going to do that. So the Suns basically have the top seed locked up. And if you look at Basketball Reference gives the Suns a 99% chance at the 1 seed in the West, which also gives you the 1 seed in all the playoffs, which means the Suns will be home court almost through the whole playoffs, unless there's devastating problems that happen. And knock on wood, nothing devastating happens, right? We'll talk about Chris Paul in a few minutes here on whether that would be devastating to lose him for any length of time. But 15-9, they can set their record for wins in a season. But even if they just go barely 500 or even under 500, they're almost certainly going to finish with the 1 seed and have home court throughout the playoffs. Now back to your comment, Brendan. The Warriors would then be stuck in the 2-3 slot, and they would likely have to play the winner. They'd start out playing the winner of the play-in, whoever won the play-in tournament, and then they'd have to play the Grizzlies probably in the second round, and then they'd have to play the Suns. The Warriors are not going to win the championship this year. The team that has the best chance to get to the finals is the 1 seed, just because of matchups.
Yeah, I agree. And in the first round, give me the Lakers, please. I want them full strength. I want no excuses. That team is terrible, and I want to expose them again. Anthony Davis and LeBron James.
Davis.
But LeBron just needs, obviously he's still LeBron and he's going to get his, but the rest of that roster is just, it's a mess. The spacing's awful. They miss Caruso. And yeah, I'm all for that rematch, but yeah, I totally agree. I think the Warriors going through Memphis will be tough. And then right after that, having to face Phoenix and, I think Utah's another tough out if they can, because they're starting to turn it up a notch as well. So
the difference between Utah and Phoenix, though, is that Phoenix made it to the finals. Utah has been knocked out in the first or second round every year they've been together. So I don't have faith that the Utah could beat the Suns in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think the Warriors would be an interesting matchup for them. My comparison to the Suns has always been, or to the Jazz has always been, that they're kind of like the Suns without wings, and wings are pretty important. So Mikal and Cam, I just don't trust their perimeter defense, and that's pretty huge, and that's why Gobert has been exposed. It's been partially he can't guard on an island that well, partially he's trying to help and recover for their defenders getting blown by all the time. So. Yeah.
And just to remember that people are saying we could win a playoff series without Chris. If the Suns had to, they probably could. And the reason I say that is because they basically played without Chris for half the Lakers series. I mean, I don't know if you recently saw a clip. I forget who was sharing it, but how far off of Chris Paul Dennis Schroeder was playing him in the playoffs when Paul couldn't shoot at all. And I think it was after he did the old man in the 3 appearance. Chris Paul did, and he talked about how nobody was guarding him, and they shouldn't have guarded him in that first round because he couldn't shoot. He couldn't actually hoist the ball or even dribble. He couldn't feel the ball to dribble it. They were playing so far off Chris Paul, it was like the Suns had Isaiah Canaan back. Nothing against Isaiah Canaan, but he's not a guy you want playing in the playoffs. And then in the conference finals, they went 2-0 against the Clippers without Paul. So yeah, I think the Suns could win a playoff series, but to win the championship and make it to the finals all the way, they're going to need Chris. So they really, really need to do what they have to do to get Chris Paul healthy at playoff time. And that's why what I'm pointing out here is we're going to transition soon after another minute or two into what do we do without Chris Paul. I'm pointing out that the Suns really only basically have to go 500 the rest of the season to keep the 1 seed. That's 2 months. They're so far ahead of everybody else. I really think they just need to do whatever it takes to make sure he's healthy, and don't let him play through any kind of injuries if he doesn't have to. Let me see if there's any other comments in here. Oh yeah, let's talk about Clippers. If Kawhi comes back healthy, Paul George comes back healthy. You just saw the Clippers on Wednesday. Was it Tuesday?
Yep.
They are tough.
I have a hot take on that, actually.
Go ahead.
I think if they end up playing the Warriors and Paul George is back and Norman Powell, and forget Kawhi, if they just have those two back and they play the Warriors in the first round, I think they could beat the Warriors straight up. And
what about beating the Suns?
I don't think they just have it. If Kawhi is healthy, then yes, they have a shot. But I just don't. First of all, it's not going to be the same Kawhi this year if he does rush back. So I just don't see him, A, coming back. B, if he did, this is going to be like a shell of his former self. because that takes so long to get back in not only game shape, but just like trusting yourself. So I have a feeling he's going to sit out the rest of the year. But even with Paul George, like we saw last year, that team is tough. Ty Lue's like probably, I think, one of the best strategic coaches in the league, and he really knows how to take what he wants away from teams. So
He's such a good
I would
coach.
I would love to see them play the Warriors in the first round.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to, yes, have the Clippers knock off somebody and then the Suns knock off the Clippers. Look, if here's the thing, if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are back in the lineup, and I keep stressing this to everybody, it's not pure Legos where you're just stacking things on top. They don't just get suddenly better by the amount of adding 2 MVP candidates to the roster, because then to the rotation, because then the guys who have been playing well won't be playing as much.
Yep.
But they will be better, absolutely be better. But I'll keep going back to the 2020 bubble. Those guys were healthy. And the team around them, I think my mostly uninformed opinion, were pretty much just as good. I don't know if this team around Kawhi and Paul George is better this year than they were 2 years ago, but they might be. But I don't know that they are. I think the Clippers have shown that, Kawhi and Paul George aren't necessarily perfect for each other in a lineup. They didn't finish off, teams when they needed to in the playoffs. So I'm not as worried about the Clippers as some people are. But yes, as far as talent, as far as the likelihood, they would definitely be the most likely team to be able to beat the Suns. What about the Denver Nuggets? Denver Nuggets, since Jokic came back from an early season injury and they straightened out their play and all that, even with him playing with a bunch of G League level kind of guys, the Denver Nuggets have been pretty good lately after a slow start. And then if they add Jamal Murray and they add Michael Porter Jr. back, what do you think about them full strength against the Suns?
I think they're kind of in the same boat as the Clippers, where even if Murray comes back, there's going to be some growing pains, minute restrictions, and he's not going to be like, Jamal Murray from day one. So I think this year for both those teams, like, could they win a series if they had the right matchup, like in round one? Yes. I just don't view them as title contenders this year, just because I think they're a year away from those guys getting comfortable and healthy. But yeah, if Murray comes back and, clicks right away, then yeah, they're a dangerous team. I think that, because we've seen what Jokic can do with like bare minimum. So if he has some help on the perimeter and offense, then, it's a tough team, but I just don't see them as a title contender. I think they're still missing a piece on the wing, but they're
well,
a lot of Suns fans kind of slept on them last year, I think, just because the whole Jamal Murray meme was taken a little too far.
I love it this whole year. Any team that loses, but if Jamal Murray was playing. Here's the thing with Denver is, while Denver is really good, I do believe that the Suns are Denver's kryptonite. And the reason I believe that is that there is a unique matchup between Ayton and Jokic that allows the Suns to not have to double Jokic. And Ayton isn't the very best center in the league. He's just not. Is he top 5, top 6, top 8? Yeah. But is he no, he's not. But what Ayton can do is defend your very best 6'10" or taller guy to the point where the rest of the team can play defense on everybody else and neutralize the rest of your team. So Ayton holds Jokic into the 40% range on shooting. Jokic has said multiple times that Ayton is his toughest opponent to score against and play against. So I really think so Denver, while dangerous, I don't think would beat the Suns. What could beat the Suns is Jamal Murray going off. If he gets 50 a game, they can beat anybody.
Yeah. What got lost in the
2020.
meme? Yeah. What got lost in that whole meme was like Jamal Murray kills the Suns. Like, people forget, like, for whatever, like dating back to like his rookie season, like he had that grudge that the Suns didn't draft him, and he's just, taking it out on them every time. So if it's that version of Jamal Murray, then yeah, it's a different story. But yeah, I think they're kind of in the camp of the Mavericks, where like I don't really take them serious as a title contender. They're a good team,
Mhm.
They're, a good regular season team, but when it comes to the playoffs, just being centered around Jokic and Doncic, I just don't think they have enough help around them to really make that push to the next level.
Yeah. Also, Buck Dog made a comment here. Mikal ain't letting him get 50. Yeah, the Suns' defense is different now than when Murray was healthy the last time. Murray helped beat the Suns early in the 2019-20 season. If you guys remember, there's back-to-backs against Denver, and the Suns lost both.
Was it a travel or did he step out?
It was the four-step travel.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
right.
the four-step travel that Steph Curry has actually mastered. In fact, you know what? The way they've broken down with Steph Curry sidestep, backstep, where Curry lifts his legs so high that it looks like he's doing one of those jumps onto a platform to jump back. He'll go 6 feet back. But they've proven that that's not, or the refs have decided that's not traveling, because the first 2 steps are the gather after picking up the ball. And then any steps after that are your 1-2 that you're allowed to have, which is just incredibly stupid. So it allows a player to have up to 4 steps after picking up the ball, as long as the ball is still not fully on both hands. That's what Curry has mastered, and that's kind of what Jamal Murray did. If Murray does those and he makes, he scores, like I said, 50 a game. But the problem is for Denver is that the Suns are much better on defense now than they were back in that day. Last time Murray was killing the Suns was when Suns defense wasn't as good. So I think Denver is again going to be tough, but I think the Suns have beat them. The only team I'd be worried about the Suns losing to would be Golden State if Curry is playing MVP level and he gets away with all of those 4-step backs. And Draymond figures out how to neutralize Ayton. And Klay Thompson goes off and scores 37 points in a quarter. That all could happen, but it's very unlikely to happen. What's most likely to happen is the Suns just make it all the way to the finals and then beat whoever's in the finals this year. We are very lucky to be in that situation. All right, let's get back. I've been kind of veering off the show notes here a little bit. Now, let's see. So this past week, just to finish up, recapping this past week real quick, is we had our annual Brightside Night. Zona, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. What that is as you guys have heard about it this whole year, is we're raising money to send people to a game that wouldn't otherwise be able to go to a basketball game. And this year we focused on first responders and healthcare workers. We sent 2,400 people to that game on Wednesday against Houston that turned out to be another one of those clutch wins. And that time without Chris Paul. And they got that clutch win. There was all those healthcare workers and first responders in the audience. We had a great pregame interview with the Suns assistant general manager. His official title is director of strategy and evaluation. He's basically their scouting director. His name is Ryan Resch. Really good guy. We did the interview off the record with just the biggest donors, the 10 plus. Anyone who donated 10 plus tickets was invited to go to this pregame, and we had about 50 people in the room, and it was really fun. And he answered every question posed. And the takeaways were basically nothing really earth shattering. In fact, I didn't take notes or record it, so I can't play it back for myself. And I was kind of emceeing the whole time, so I don't remember exactly what he said, but he didn't say anything really earth shattering. He did admit that Chris Paul was the one who initiated the trade to the Suns. That's always been expected and kind of assumed, but he confirmed that I can't confirm or deny that. So he confirmed it. And there was a couple of other things he didn't really answer on DA, other than DA's best interest for his contract is that first of all, it's easier to do it this next summer than it was this past summer because of the extension rule. And it actually is important to them to keep that second designated player slot open. And by signing DA to a new contract this summer at whatever price, it won't be the designated one. So they'll still have, just in case they get somebody who's on a designated extension, they could acquire that person without having to give up DA. They love DA, and he's the only thing he wrapped up with was if he keeps playing like he's playing, and he does great in the playoffs again and all that, he'll make it a no-brainer on what his next contract will be. They don't have any interest in losing DA, and that's good to hear. It's just smarter money to have waited till this next summer, as frustrated as we all got. Okay, so that's the rest of our recap. Now let's move on to Chris Paul. So Chris Paul, on Thursday night or Wednesday night in that Houston Rockets game, early in the third quarter, he banged his hand on I think it was Jason Tate. It might have been for Houston on Jason Tate's arm when he was passing the ball over that guy, and immediately started grabbing his hand and got himself thrown out of the game basically because he knew he couldn't play any further anyway, and he was all pissed off. So we were all worried. We've all been worried. It was reported later that he was going to get an MRI on Thursday in LA, in California, where his family lives, because he's going there because they were starting the All-Star break. We have not yet heard a result from that MRI, but here's what I'm going to take away from it and what I've been able to gather on the down low, because nobody's really reporting anything. There's no bone damage, right? So he didn't like break his thumb, because that would have come out in x-rays. B, he is wearing a brace to keep his thumb in place, so no motion. But there's no results on the MRI, but folks around the team are expecting this, are treating this like a day-to-day thing, not a long-term injury. If he needed surgery, if he needed anything other than rehab, just rest and rehab, they would have announced that. But the Suns also do not have to give any injury reports until next week before their next game. So the Suns are allowed to keep it to themselves and keep it quiet and all that. They like doing that. But I would expect that this will be treated very similar to, my expectation is they'll treat it very similar to Cam Payne hurting his wrist, Jae Crowder hurting his wrist, both in that same game, DeAndre Ayton rolling an ankle, Devin Booker rolling or pulling a hamstring. All of those were soft tissue strains, and all of those were about 2 weeks to 3 weeks on recovery. So that's the assumption I'm making. I'm not saying anything for sure. He could very well start next week against Oklahoma City Thunder and be just fine. But he is wearing a brace to immobilize his thumb. And you may even see him in the All-Star game tomorrow. I doubt it, but you may see him in the All-Star game tomorrow. And if you do, that means he'll even be less than 2 weeks out. But I would expect the Suns will be very conservative, and they'll want to keep Chris Paul. They're going to want to make sure he's good at the end of the year, not just forcing his way through an injury. Because as we know, he played the finals with a hurt wrist that he needed surgery on after the finals. Well, this isn't the finals. There's 2 months until the playoffs start. The Suns have what I already went through earlier in this podcast, a nearly insurmountable lead that Chris Paul can day-to-day with, right? Like if the Suns come out and without him, they lose 4 straight, guess who's going to be back in the lineup, right? But if they split or they go 3-1 or they whatever they do in the first few games out of the put break, I would expect that they would just nurse Chris Paul until he's fully healthy. So that's my thought, is that I would be very surprised if Chris Paul plays next week in the first game after the break. But I would not be surprised if he is out 2 to 3 weeks. I think that's the most likely thing, and that'll just be preventative, and it'll always be day to day. So there's my rant. Zona, do you have any other insights or thoughts or opinions on this?
Yeah, I think number one, it points to why you trade for someone like Aaron Holiday, because I know there are some Suns fans who are like, why would you trade for another guard? But I mean, obviously you don't want an injury to Chris Paul or to Cam Payne, but it's a long season. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to need that depth. And now that trade looks even better in hindsight. I think Chris Paul would be fine personally. I don't have any sources based on this. Is just my gut feeling that he'll play tomorrow and he'll be good to go after the All-Star break. But if not, I do think they are built to where, like you said, they can survive and go, 3-1 or 2-2 in 4-game stretches and survive a little, 2-week absence from Paul. And outside of, trying to hit 70 wins, they don't really have much to play for at this point. Like you said, they're going to lock up the 1 seed just by existing pretty much the rest of the season, because they have such a huge advantage already. It's, home court is pretty much a given at this point. So I'm not overly concerned. I think they're built to withstand it in the short term, but they do need to think big picture and make sure he's good to go for the playoffs. So if he has to sit a couple weeks, that's fine. They'll be fine.
Okay, so you think that he's going to be fine. That's your most likely scenario is he's going to play tomorrow in the All-Star game, and he's going to play next week when the season resumes. Yep. What Kevin Young said, the Suns lead assistant said, was that Chris Paul would insist on playing on Sunday, and those guys would know more about Chris Paul's current injury status than anyone else. It was also reported that Devin Booker reported himself that he saw Chris Paul after the game on Wednesday night and said Chris Paul's fine, and he didn't think it would impact his All-Star weekend, and it hasn't. Chris Paul is in Cleveland for All-Star weekend. If he was really injured, he wouldn't have gone. He would have spent more time with his family and just used a chance to spend more time with his family. We got a really good question from Ty Johnson in the chat. Ty, I just want you to know I added it to our true false section in a few minutes, so keep an eye out for that. That was a very good question about whether CP3 would retire if they win the trophy. But that's right now. I want to finish talking about CP3 and what the Suns can do while CP3 is out. What's also been reported is that, and this is not a formal reporting, it's like a hey, by the way, the expectation is that Cam Payne and Landry Shamet will both be active for the second half, starting in the second half against the OKC Thunder on the road in OKC. Whether that actually happens or not, I'm sure there's a couple of more gates that they have to, milestones or hurdles they have to cross to get cleared to play those two guys. But they have been practicing full speed or near full speed for the past week. And so I would expect that they're going to be just fine to start the second half. So that gives you, as Chris Paul's backups, Cam Payne, Aaron Holiday, and Elfrid Payton. Cam Payne helped the Suns go 2-0 in the Western Conference Finals last year without Chris Paul, with no prep, no mental time to get ready for it. And he even put up 29-9 with 0 turnovers in Game 2 after Booker put up a 40-point triple-double in Game 1. The other thing we saw on Wednesday night was Book playing point Book the entire second half. As soon as CP3 went out, they didn't put Aaron Holiday on the ball. They didn't put Elfrid Payton on the ball against Houston, a 15-win Houston team. Booker wanted to win so bad, he played the entire second half and went point Book, and he ended up with 8 assists. And if the Suns had made any more, a few more of their shots, because that was part of the reason they didn't blow out Houston, was they weren't making shots, Booker would have had double-digit assists. So the Suns do have options at point guard. What do you think is going to happen? Let's say Chris Paul takes 2 weeks off. How do you think the rotation is going to go at point guard, Zona?
I mean, obviously it depends on Cam Payne's recovery too, but are we assuming he's back after the All-Star break?
Who? Cam?
Cam, yeah.
Yeah, let's assume Cam Payne is healthy as soon as the All-Star break is over, and that Chris Paul is not. He's going to sit out 2 weeks. Let's just make that assumption. What happens?
Yeah, so I think Payne will obviously be plugged into the starting lineup. It could take him a little bit to get his legs back and all that, coming back from sitting out. But I think, like you said, we'll see some point Book lineups. One thing about Holiday is he can play on or off ball on offense. So that's a nice luxury to have. Hopefully, we'll probably see Elfrid Payton minutes, even though, no one wants to. But no knock on him. But, I love the Holiday pickup for that reason, to where you can – go with point Book and kind of, get back to some of those bigger lineups. Like we saw Torrey Craig at center against the Rockets, which I like the Torrey Craig at center project against certain matchups, but I'm not sure I agreed with that one. I thought they should have tried to pound it inside.
Houston went totally small on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Totally small. They played Sengun at center in most of that second half while they had the lead against the Suns, Sengun. And that guy's what, 6'8", 6'9"? So the Suns tried to go with, and what Monty said after that game is we stayed big with Ayton and McGee, but which was great on offense because we just scored at the rim every time. But on defense, the Houston guards were just blowing by. And I don't think we saw a playoff Ayton against the Houston Rockets in that game. And so while he did very well, he had 24, 25 points, 9 rebounds. Ayton wasn't locking down perimeter drivers. So they went small and put Torrey Craig in for almost the entire fourth quarter, kind of like they put Ish Wainwright in for the entire fourth quarter a week and a half ago against a bad team. So Torrey can play small ball 5.
Yeah, the versatility on this roster is insane. Like, I mean, you could play Crowder, Wainwright, or Craig at the 5 if you want to. You could roll, Bismack and Ayton, or JaVale and Ayton we've even seen. So there's so many different things they could do with their wings and their bigs that it's insane. And now you have this guard depth where, I listed all those guards. I didn't even bring up Landry Shamet, who obviously he's in a shooting slump, and Suns fans aren't, huge Shamet fans right now, but he's a part of that rotation when he gets back. I think he'll get another chance with Paul out if Paul does miss time. But like I said on the last pod, I predicted that Holiday is going to take Shamet's spot, and that's looking pretty good so far. I'd love to be wrong though. I hope if Shamet could get back to like 45% from 3 to close the season out and bump his average up to what he normally shoots, which is about 40 on the season, then that'd be great. But yeah, right now they're in a good place depth wise, and it's just insane to look at this roster from top to bottom.
Yeah, that's interesting to talk about Shamet because we hadn't brought him up yet. You're right. That gives even more chance for point book. The only thing with Booker is you don't want to totally wear him down on bringing the ball up. I know we've had this argument on this podcast for years with the former co-hosts, and then I don't think you and I have had to worry about this, Zona, because we've had Chris Paul the whole time. But back in the pre-Chris Paul days, and even somewhat during the Ricky Rubio days, there was a lot of argument about why isn't Booker a point guard. The thing is, actually pounding the ball the whole game wears you out. So actually bringing it up all the time, initiating the offense, especially if they're going to try to pressure you full court, that wears you out. And you need peak Devin Booker for shooting and defense the rest of the game. So I don't know if he'll play a ton with Shamet next to him. In fact, I'd feel a little bit better about even Cam Johnson or Mikal Bridges bringing the ball up at this point than Landry Shamet if they're fronting Devin Booker. So that's going to be interesting to watch how that goes, how much Shamet plays if Booker is point book.
Yeah,
that definitely gives you another shooter.
Sorry to cut you off, but do you remember preseason when Suns fans talked themselves into Shamet being like a point guard? Yeah, that was a thing, and that's
Monty was talking about it. Yeah. He was saying that, and a couple of the players were that Shamet was actually a point guard in college.
Yeah, and a lot of people bought into that, and not the best results so far. He's, maybe if he had his confidence going with a shot, like some of the other stuff would, follow suit just based off confidence. But it seems like every time he catches the ball, he's just trying to pass it or, make a quick decision. So, that's been a pretty disappointing project, but it's easy to focus on one guy that's slumping when the rest of the team is playing so well. So maybe we should be a little less harsh on him and just hope that shot comes around, because when he's shooting it at a high clip, he will be valuable for this team. So hopefully coming out of the All-Star break, he snaps out of it.
I'd rather actually, you said it just now, and you said it last week. It could be that Aaron Holiday ends up spending more time next to Book.
I think he will.
Certainly spending time next to Campaign. If you guys remember back in the bubble, when the Suns went 8-0 in the bubble, pre-Chris Paul, their backup guards behind Rubio and Booker were Payne and Javon Carter. And that's because Javon Carter was pressuring full court, playing great defense, and was making catch and shoot threes. And while Campaign was being the initiator, the playmaker, and driving and getting his layups when he needed to and making his threes. Aaron Holiday as you stated yourself, Zona, is basically Javon Carter with a little bit more juice and a lot more ability to finish at the rim and score at the rim than Javon Carter could. So I'm actually pretty happy about that Holiday acquisition, not as point guard, but as a guy who can play next to Cam Payne and next to Devin Booker, and even next to Chris Paul in times. I think that's a great chance for them.
Yeah, that's a really great point about the bubble, because those two, Payne and Carter, I mean, if you go back and rewatch that, like Suns fans, if you have time to go like look at the bubble again, like that duo was just, they were just complete menaces. Like they were blowing everything up. They were turning the game around, just, picking up 94 feet. It was crazy. It was chaos. And that's part of what changed the culture. Like, I know people will laugh at it, but Javon Carter was just like one of those James Jones guys that really fit what they wanted to do in terms of like the locker room and work ethic. And, everyone pointed to that all throughout the season last year and the season prior. But yeah, I think, Holiday fits that mold where he's going to come in and he doesn't care if he plays 5 minutes or 20, he's going to go 100 miles an hour at all times. So I love the fit just from the standpoint of how he fits around the guys. And obviously anyone that comes to Phoenix is just going to look better with the system they have in place. So Jones knows how to, find that perfect balance, I think.
I love the chats going in on Landry Shamet, and I would be sharing some of these, but man, I feel bad for Landry. He has had not as good a first half as we all hoped, for sure. But then bottom line, after you talk about all the bad things about Landry Shamet, Sawbucks has the very best wrap-up comment, which is, oh, no, not this one. Where'd it go? Yep, there we go. Suns fans put Shamet down, but he'd still be the best shooter on the Lakers. That's true. I always like a good Laker dig. All right, so that's what the Suns could do without Chris Paul. That the Suns do have tons of depth, and I wonder how their rotation is going to shake out by playoff time. We'll see who's most likely to be successful in the playoffs. Holiday's a little undersized. Shamet has always kind of lost minutes in the playoffs. Cam Payne was the one who stepped up in the playoffs for the Suns last year, so I'm still expecting it to be the same rotation it was, guard rotation it was in the playoffs last year, which is mostly Cam with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. So all this is just regular season fodder for how can the Suns go at least 500 for the rest of the year, even if Chris Paul's injured. Jeff Macias had a question in the chat of, can we talk about Jae Crowder and his wrist injury and his shooting slump? With Jae, his wrist injury is his left wrist, not his right wrist. So he's just in a terrible shooting slump. It could be that the pain he's feeling from the wrist is impacting his ability to concentrate on shots. I don't know. And he's definitely in a horrible shooting slump. But you know what that means, Suns fans, is at some point Jay's going to make a ton of shots for a while, and we're all going to think he's the best shooter in the game again. So the great thing about Jae is when he's down, he always bounces back up. Yep. Rick Johnson made the same comment in the chat too.
Yeah, he's the streakiest shooter like I've seen in recent memory on the Suns. Like it's crazy. You just kind of have to live with it, because what you're going to get from him every night, effort wise and on defense. If the shot's falling, they're very tough to beat. If it's
Jae is awesome in the clutch. He's awesome on defense. He's a great team defender. He makes sure everybody's in the right spot. He had that one game of 0 points and 14 rebounds. I mean, he does whatever it takes. He gets the steals at the end of the game against, was it Houston or the Clippers? He had 2 steals in the final minute. I think it was the
Clippers. 2
steals in the final minute and a half to seal that win. That's just who Jae is. I just want to keep Jae in the game and enjoy when he's shooting well. Yeah, it was the Clippers. So, all right, let's move on to our true false section. The true false section today is basically I ask a series of true false questions, and Zona, you give your answer, and everybody in the chat will give their answers as well. The first question is true false. The Suns starting lineup. So let's talk about this. Suns starting lineup this year. I'm going to change it to what you saw in the show notes a little bit. So if you already had an answer, make sure you modify it based on how I'm modifying this question. The Suns starting lineup, who has missed DeAndre Ayton for 21 games, Devin Booker for 7 games, Jae Crowder for 8 games, all this. The Suns starting lineup. How many starting lineups in the league? How many lineups in the league have more minutes played this season than the Suns?
Starting lineups or just
Yeah,
lineups?
yeah. So it's not really a true false. True, or let's just say true. The Suns do not lead the league in minutes played this year. That's the question. True, false.
Okay. I'm gonna go. It's been such a weird year with all the COVID stuff and hardships, and a lot of teams kind of switch their lineups all the time. So I'm gonna go true. I think true that they do lead the league in the most.
Okay, you're gonna say they lead the league in minutes played.
Yeah, just because they have that consistent lineup that a lot of teams switch their lineups day to day, honestly. So I think the consistency outweighs injuries, but I'm going to go true on that one.
All right. So sorry, folks. I had you backwards on the question. I totally screwed it up. But basically, the answer is the Suns lead the league in minutes played this year by a wide margin. What's crazy to me is they've only been together for 32 of their 58 games so far. And they still lead the league because they average almost 20 minutes a game together as a 5-man unit when they do play. That's how good they are. That's how great they are. They start every game. They end every half. They start every second half, and they end every clutch time. They lead the league in minutes played by a wide margin, by almost like 30% on minutes. Part of that is injuries to other teams, and part of that is ineffectiveness by other teams. Guess who's in the top 3 of minutes played together this year that is on a really disappointing losing team?
Would it be like the Pistons or Rockets or something?
Knicks.
Tom
Thibodeau.
Good old, yeah, Thibs. I was going to say.
He is so stubborn that he has insisted on playing. I think they're second or third. Tom Thibodeau's Knicks, playing Evan Fournier, Kevin Walker, Julius Randle. I forget what the other two are. I think it's Mitchell Robinson and RJ Barrett. They have the worst. They're like a minus 15 per game, and yet he's still playing them every game.
Yeah, revoke his coach of the year.
Yeah, I know. Can we retroactively take away his coach of the year, please? Okay. Next, true or false. Now I'm gonna ask the question in a way you guys can actually freaking answer from now on. I promise. This one actually I already gave earlier, so I'm going to go to the third true or false. Suns have more wins against winning teams than any other team in the league. True or false?
I'm going to go true, but I feel like this could be a trick question. I do think they have the most, but they also are a winning team, so that always they can't beat themselves, so it kind of limits their opportunities a little bit, but I'm going to go true.
That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to say it, because what's happened all year actually is the Suns have actually played according to like who's got a winning record right now, not at the time they played, but winning record right now as of today. There's 8 teams in the East out of 16, and there's now 7 teams in the West. So less than half the league has winning record. The Suns actually have generally played fewer games against winning teams this season than the rest of the league. One of that is because they can't play themselves, but the other is that that's just the way their schedule is broken out. And they still have one of the easiest schedules even in the second half of the year, which is funny, but I guess that's the spoils of being the top seed, right?
Yeah.
The Suns actually have only played 25 games against winning teams this year so far. By comparison, the Warriors have played 29, Grizzlies have played 28, Jazz 28, Mavericks 26, Denver 29. All these other teams have played a few more games against winning teams. So I'll ask you again, do you still think the Suns lead the league in wins against winning teams?
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say they've been the most efficient, even if they don't have the most opportunities to do it.
Yes. The Suns actually do. They do have the best record against winning teams at 19-6. It's only 25 games, but they're 19-6. They also have the best record against losing teams at 29-4. You've noticed the Suns don't just give away those games to losing teams. They have the best road record, the best home record, the best up against above 500, below 500. I still remember the 7 seconds or less Suns. What would stress us out as fans is that even though they were winning 62 games and all that and 61 games, they were still barely 500 against the best teams in the league. And so you'd always wonder how it went in the playoffs. The Suns are actually, the last time I checked, they were 9-4 against the top 3 seeds in each conference or something like that too. So they even have the best record there. It's pretty crazy.
They're like 20-3 against the East right now. So it's just
right. It's just crazy.
It's just dominant.
Yeah, Devin Booker. I don't know if you saw, but he pasted their schedule, their recent schedule of 18 games, last 18 games, and social media, and he put the angry face over the one loss they had against the Hawks. Yeah, so I did point out, did the Hawks expose the Suns? We talked about that. And it's not just that hit 23s against the Suns and you can beat them, but it's, Suns got to make sure that they play tough defense against a team that's, don't do drop defense against a team that's shooting all kinds of threes. But anyway, last true false. This is thanks to JC Macias, I think, in the chat earlier. So I have a question for you. True or false? Does CP3 retire if the Suns win the finals this year? He'll be 37 years old.
That's a good question. I'm going to go false, I think. And the only reason I'd say that, most people are wired to where I think they would in that situation. But Chris Paul is a sicko, as they mentioned on JJ's podcast. And I feel like if he can still play, like, I just can't see him walking away from the game. I really can't. I think he wants to play. He mentioned Tom Brady in that interview, and, Brady is playing, like, he's kind of defied the whole age thing as far as like extending your career. So I think even if it kind of makes sense on paper for him to just call it quits, like, I could see him, if he's healthy, he's going to want to run it back. I just don't see him calling it quits yet, but maybe if he's banged up or something, has a rough run in the playoffs, but they pull it out, then maybe I could see it happening. But if he's healthy, I just can't see him doing it.
This is the guy. Okay, we've got people going back and forth. Some people say, yeah, he might. Others will say, no way, he'll play forever. This is the guy that the Suns' lead assistant just said would claw his way into the All-Star game if he possibly could, because he plays for Monty Williams' team this Sunday. Actually, I see Chris Paul playing until his cold, dead hands can't grip a ball anymore. Literally, the guy's going to play. He might be the oldest starting point guard in league history by the time he's done. I think John Stockton played until he was 42, if I remember right. I'll have to go back and look at that. But I would bet that Chris Paul wants to outplay the career of John Stockton. The only question is, as far as contracts and stuff like that, is he still playing well enough to earn $30 million a year? We don't know. But I guarantee he'll be on somebody's roster when he's 43, 44 years old. Okay, so that is our entire true false. Thank you all for participating in that. What we're going to do is we're going to wrap up this show, and we're going to preview what's upcoming. So Sunday is the All-Star game. By the time you listen to this, it might have already been played. Tell me what you like and dislike about the All-Star game. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Monty Williams and his coaching staff will all be there. What do you like and not like about the All-Star game, Zona?
I like the fact that they're, Book and CP are going to be going. Well, if Paul plays, I mean, that's still to be determined. But hypothetically, if him and Booker were ever matched up against each other, that would be an awesome moment or two if that happens. Just seeing Monty and the whole staff there, I think, is awesome. The Rising Stars game, getting their assistants to coach that. It's just a great experience for them that they deserve. What I don't like is, 0 reps on Saturday tonight. So that's disappointing. I think Cam Johnson not being in the 3-point contest is a joke. And yeah, I think for the most part, it feels like they're just kind of ignoring the 48-10 Suns to me by only having 2 reps. But just still have to enjoy it, and hopefully we get Devin Booker to have one of those performances where he just goes legendary mode and takes over a game. But I do like the new format of the game too. I think it makes it more competitive, and it's the most watchable All-Star game of any sport. Like, no one cares about the Pro Bowl. The MLB All-Star game is boring. The Home Run Derby is great, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'm excited for this one, and hopefully it can have a similar ending to last year's All-Star game.
Blaze says he likes pretty much everything, doesn't like Andrew Wiggins being in the game. Fabio says he'd love to see a CP3 rip through on Book.
That would be great. I really want
guys are
CP
saying
to play.
Anything's better than the NFL Pro Bowl. That's true. What's going to be funny, whether Chris Paul plays or not. Chris Paul's on Monty Williams' team. Let's assume he's not. I'm going to assume he's not playing for a sack, or at least doesn't play through the game. What I'm really curious about is how is Monty. Sorry. The All-Star game actually has a competitive end to it now because they're playing the Elam ending. They're calling it to something so they don't give Elam credit, but the guy who invented this ending is a guy named Elam. And the Elam ending is whatever the score is at the beginning of the fourth quarter, the first team to get to 24 points over the top score. So if it's 88-84, basically you'd have to get, or 90-84, let's make it really simple. 90-84 score. Whoever gets to 114 points first wins the game. So the team who was trailing going into the fourth has to score more points. But as soon as you get that target score, that's the game winner. That makes it really fun the final few minutes, because the way the All-Star game goes, these guys are so good, they make it close. And what's going to be awesome is watching Devin Booker, who's one of the best scorers in the league in the clutch, going up in the clutch minutes. How will Monty defend him to try to get him to not score? What's funny about the All-Star game is okay, fine. So DeMar DeRozan will be out there, and all these other guys will be out there who are also clutch scorers. It's interesting that I'd like to see Monty try to stop Devin Booker from beating Monty's team and Chris Paul's team. And I think Devin Booker, as a high competitor, will try to beat those guys just to say he could. These guys are hella competitors. And so it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to the fourth quarter of the All-Star game for sure. The first 3 quarters, they do some other kind of contests and they donate to charities and stuff like that. So they make those kind of fun, but the fourth quarter is where all the money is. And I can't wait. It's going to be great. So that's what I'm looking forward to on the All-Star game. It does suck that there's nobody playing on All-Star Saturday, but for a guy who's had to cover the Suns for 10 years and most of the fun has been Friday, Saturdays, but nothing on Sunday, I'm happy that most of the fun is on Sunday now, because that's the real game. Yeah.
And if I have one more quick thing to add to that, if Chris Paul isn't playing, and what I need him to do is, I don't know if the whole NBA personnel is all staying in the same hotel or area, but he needs to find Adam Silver's room and hold him hostage until he names Mikal as his replacement. Maybe that's why he went to Cleveland. But I need Chris Paul to work his magic with the connections with the league, make sure Mikal gets in there. So maybe he went to Cleveland just to say face to face to Adam, like, you're going to put Mikal in as my replacement, and hopefully Monty could help too. Let's make it happen. That's my conspiracy theory.
That's hilarious. Mikal, I didn't see that. Mikal is in Cleveland right now.
I guess so. So, well,
wow.
I mean,
that's funny.
We'll see what happens.
That's funny. Yeah, usually those guys just take the weekend to regather themselves and all that, but Mikal he's the Energizer Bunny. Okay, then the Suns season restarts later this week. There are 2 games back to back, of course, before you and I record again Saturday morning. They play at the Thunder, and then they host the Pelicans. And that's, again, a game against Willie Green and Monty's former top assistant. The Pelicans have been playing better lately. The Thunder have beaten a couple of good teams. They're up and down. What do you think the Suns are going to do this week?
I think they'll win both. It is It's a back-to-back, right off the jump. Yeah, I think they'll take both those games.
All right, so you think the Suns are going to go 2-0 in their first two games? That they should win both, and
Yep.
based on the way they've been, they definitely been most likely to be able to win those both games. But if they're not playing Chris Paul and they're trying out new things, I kind of wonder if they're going to go 2-0. I'm still going to say 2-0 because obviously this team has won 18 of 19 games. They have a previous 18-game winning streak in this season alone before this 18 of 19 run. They're currently at 7 straight or 8. Is it 7 straight or 8 straight? Anyway, they're currently on a nice win streak, and they're nonstop. So I'm going to go 2-0 for this. A couple of people commented in the chat. How do you get green names in the chat? Well, that is if you hit the join button, you can become a member of the solar panel and give back to us. Brandon and I, for all the hard work we do, bringing this show to you every Saturday, and the midweeks we bring as well. If you want to give back a little bit, you can join, and there's a just a monthly fee involved in that. You do get some extra perks, but most of the perks are just being able to see our happy faces and know that you helped us keep this thing going. So thank you very much if you do that. At the very least, please hit the thumbs up button. Do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up on this show. That helps the algorithms, helps us get to the top of people's feeds better if you hit the thumbs up. I'd very much appreciate that. And for the folks who don't know what I'm talking about with the midweeks, because you're only here on Saturday mornings on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. You guys are awesome. But if you really want to listen to midweek interviews with national personalities, then definitely you should subscribe to our feed on any of your podcast networks on your channel and play play our show midweek. Here, I'm going to just give you a quick ad to describe what I'm talking about and how you follow us on the
For those watching this episode on YouTube, I've got some news for you. You're only getting half the story. The Solar Panel Podcast delivers you an additional special episode every Wednesday with a national personality from places like The Ringer, The Athletic, Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, NBA.com, and everyone else. You'll hear what the non-locals think about the Suns and the NBA in general. It's a new feed, though. You've got to click some buttons. Forget the old one. Get the new one. Go to your favorite pod app. Search for Solar Panel Podcast with the orange logo. While you're there, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you leave me a 5-star review, I'll give you props on the air.
Yeah, so I know some of you used to be on our podcast feed. That switched over to the PHNX feed. That feed went with Espo to PHNX. So if you want to hear some of our midweek shows, you've got to subscribe to the new feed. I know some of you have not switched over to that yet. So I'd like you to do that, and leave us a 5-star review if you do. I really appreciate all those reviews that we get. It's great to hear feedback on our show. It really is. We try hard to bring you good content every week. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Zona, tell us where we can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully the Suns, fun All-Star weekend. Suns go 2-0 and can get to that aesthetically pleasing 50-10 record. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ZonaHoops_. My work on brightsideofthesun.com and ZonaHoops.com.
All right, man. You guys, all of you folks, you can find me outside of podcasting. If you think I've got a voice and a face for writing, I appreciate that. That's where I started. I am at brightsideofthesun.com. You can find my work most every day there. And we've got a ton of writers, including Zona, who contribute to the website. It's the best, biggest Suns website in the world. So go there. If you haven't gone there yet, please do. And thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you folks. You have a good weekend. Enjoy your All-Star game, and we'll catch you next week when the Suns have played a couple of more games.